All right, so it's preparing to live stream. So for all of our buddies, just join in. We'll have a YouTube meeting very soon, but let us know in the chat, what are you excited about most in the future? I see a lot of VR, AR, metaverse, AI, social media. Wow, nice. Awesome. Cool. Welcome, everyone. We are officially live. We officially began. There's over 200 of us on Zoom on this fine Monday morning or evening, wherever you are. We're super excited to have John from Design Theory on with us today. You should definitely check out his YouTube channel. We will be discussing a lot of exciting topics about the future of design, like data science, AR, VR, AI, robots. Will robots take over the world? We don't know. Yeah, so with that, I will quickly introduce Design Buddies and some house rules before we get started. So I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies full-time. I'm also a digital product and user experience designer. And I created Design Buddies for fun about 2 years ago as a student. And our goal is to help designers level up, whether that be making new friends, gaining new knowledge, landing jobs and stuff. So we hosted over 100 events right now. And you're all welcome to connect with us, join us, and connect with fellow buddies. We want all y'all to be friends, support each other in your journey as well. There's some house rules. Events are recorded, but if you don't wish to be part of any of it, you can engage in YouTube, which will be live streaming right now on our YouTube channel, just Design Buddies. Feel free to engage in a chat. If John says something you really resonate with, just feel free to respond to each other, chat with each other. We're just really friendly, wholesome community, no judgment here, be yourself. But please keep promotional links in the networking sheet. We want y'all to connect with each other too. You can even send each other personalized invite on LinkedIn saying that y'all met at this event and be buddies for life. And you can submit your questions on Slido. We also collected a bunch of your questions that you've added on Luma. At the end, we'll take a group selfie. And we also have some Zoom backgrounds. Y'all can twin with us as well if you want to Design Buddies ones. And if you learned something like really cool today, definitely share on social media, tag John, tag Design Buddies. We'll reshare it. Connect with each other, hop in Discord, have fun. And we reached 40K members today, so really exciting. And with that, let me stop sharing. Oh, my Zoom controls, stop share. There we go. Yeah, so we're excited. So John, we're excited to have you on. Please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So once again, my name is John Moriello. I've been working professionally as an industrial designer for about 12 years now. I'm a professor at California College of the Arts. I'm a freelance industrial designer working with some of the biggest tech companies in the world in Silicon Valley. And I have a YouTube channel called Design Theory with over 160,000 subscribers. But I think most importantly, I'm really, really passionate about talking about design and the future of technology and all of these sorts of subjects and topics. So I'd love to hear your questions, and I'm really excited to have a conversation about them more than me just sort of telling you what I think. I think it would be really great if we could have more of a conversation about these ideas. That's what's most exciting to me. So thanks.
Yeah, of course. And thanks so much for taking your time to chat with us buddies today. Really excited to learn more about this topic. Cool, just to get into it, we've divided some submitted questions. So I'll just kind of go down the list of Luma, but if y'all have any questions, definitely submit them on Slido. You can just drop the link really quick as well. But we have like a good amount, so we'll be jumping in between questions depending on what flows. So the first question is just about trends and general design. We see the lines between traditional design disciplines, graphic, digital, game, industrial design, etc., blur more and more with cross-functional products, experiences, and systems in our world. How do we expect traditional design career paths to transition into this increasingly multidisciplinary world?
Okay, so there's sort of an assumption in this question that we are sort of blurring the lines, which I agree with. I agree 100% that a multidisciplinary or systems thinking approach is going to be really, really important right now. It's not enough to just be good at a specific skill anymore. And I actually made a whole video about this on my Design Theory channel if you want to check it out. But before I answer this question, I think it's important to explore why designers are expected to operate this way now. And I think the biggest reason is that information is more accessible than ever because of, design buddies or design theory or whatever else. I mean, prior to the mid 2010s, or maybe even later than that, the only way to get access to this information, to good information about design, was to go to a university. I mean, there were books on it and things like that, but it wasn't nearly as prevalent as it is now. So right now, you can pay a couple $100 for an online course and get a pretty good overview that only would have been possible to get through a university education. I mean, I know one person who actually took my online course about industrial design, and he got a job as an industrial designer with no university education, no formal university education. And I mean, Grace, you did the same thing. And that would have been impossible even 5 years ago, I'm pretty sure. So the playing field is worldwide now, especially after March 2020. Anybody can learn technical skills online, and many jobs are remote now. So you're not just competing with the people in your local area for design jobs. You're competing with the world stage. And a lot of these people are like really, really good. So in order to stand out, you have to make it clear to employers that you bring something unique to the table. Okay, so the question was, I wanted to sort of provide that context because I think it's really important. Like, design buddies would not have been possible even 10 years ago, I don't think, at least not in the same capacity. So how do we deal with that? I think there are two potential ways that you can be prepared for this transition. One way is to just do your best to spot these emerging trends like augmented reality or artificial intelligence and familiarize yourself with the tools as much as possible. If you're interested in augmented reality, just as an example, an understanding of physical user experience in 3-dimensional space is going to be really, really important. Flat interfaces just aren't really going to cut it with AR. Another thing, and this was my approach, is to just explore tangentially related things that are interesting to you without any consideration of how it's going to lead to monetization. So my cross-disciplinary approach to design wasn't strategic in any way. I just pursued things that I thought were cool, and they just sort of ended up getting me a whole bunch of work. So even if it doesn't get you a job, at least you're exploring things that are interesting to you. Not everything has to go back to you making money. The thing that makes a designer special is their point of view in a lot of cases. So if you want to create interesting designs, you have to pursue interesting or unique paths. Like, I never thought that my knowledge of playing an instrument, playing bass guitar, would amount to anything in my design career. But I ended up designing a bass guitar purely for fun and posted a YouTube video about it. And the video got like 400,000 views, and I have a wait list of about 2,000 people who want to order a limited production run of the instruments. Now, this combines a lot of things that seemingly have nothing to do with industrial design. Music doesn't really directly relate to ID. Video production has nothing to do with industrial design. But, I was just sort of exploring these things without pretense, and it led to good outcomes. And even if there are a lot of other things that I explore that don't really go anywhere, and that's okay too. At least you're doing things that are interesting to you. So that was kind of a long answer, but the short of it is basically just take the time to explore things that are interesting to you, and eventually you will find those connections organically. And that's basically it. One last thing I want to mention about this is, it is important to hone your craft and spend time developing your skills for thousands of hours. That's sort of a given. But if all you do for the next 5 years is just push pixels and create wireframes for 16 hours a day, you're really, really limiting your potential as a designer. It's important to go outside and just try new things. New experiences are like rocket fuel for creativity. So find those connections, and that's how you adapt to this sort of multidisciplinary world that we're in right now, at least in my opinion. Does that kind of answer the question? I hope it does.
Yeah, I hard agree with that actually, because I feel like a lot of designers this is like including my own mindset in the beginning, and what I see in a lot of people in design, but it's like you have to like live and breathe UX. It's like UX or like design is life, but I feel like by exploring what interests you and not focusing on monetizing all your hobbies, makes it more fun and also helps you stand out as a designer. So I feel like that's like a thing people struggle with these days as well. So just doing things for fun, not thinking about like how do I monetize it, how do I get an ROI, just vibe and do it for fun. I guess that's how I did design buddies and learned design without a formal university degree. So yeah, hard
Yeah,
agree
you're a
with that.
testament. Actually, I didn't really think about it when I was, you're like a testament to, the trends that are happening right now in the design industry. Like it's kind of amazing that you actually broke into the field with no formal design education. That's very, very impressive. I don't want to understate how difficult that is. It's still really, really hard to do, and you probably should get a university education if you can. But I mean, it's kind of incredible that you can do it at all. So congratulations, Grace. You're
Thank
the
you. I
best.
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I studied bio and computer engineering in school. So nothing related to design, but I feel like a lot of designers, here's a quick point is they feel like they're disadvantaged if they didn't study design in school, but I feel like you can draw from all your experiences and apply them to design, like problem solving, like engineering and stuff. So don't feel discouraged if y'all come from different fields and didn't study design as your first major in college. And I feel like just having open mind of experimenting, curiosity, learning, it help bring me to many places. So highly recommend that as well. We're gonna hop to our next question. I know you have like a really great video about AI and Dolly and how that would impact all of what might have like end human creativity or not. So our next question is about AI is what do you think what the future of creative designer in context of DALL-E and how this tool can add value without replacing human creativity or putting creative keywords will become human intervention. The rest of the process is what AI would do.
So the question I think is AI going to replace human creativity, and is creativity just going to be us entering stuff into DALL-E text to image prompting? I think that's the question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Quick question. Did you say hop to the next question because of like, design buddies, you got the bunny theme and everything, or was that,
Oh yeah, we always say hop and we call our buddies the buddies.
it's good. I like that. Keep doing that.
Thank you.
I'm into it. Okay. So, hopping on to the next question. It feels weird when I do it. I'll just let you do it. Okay. So let's see. Think of it this way. With AI, you're basically, or any technology, you're just moving up one level of abstraction in terms of your craft. So if you think about Michelangelo, the famous oil painter and sculptor, actually, but let's just stick to painting. Michelangelo would have to mix his own paint with ground up powder and usually linseed oil. He had his own special proprietary recipe even, and a lot of oil painters did this. And then you could just buy paint out of a tube after a certain point, which is sort of where we're at now with oil painting. But even further, even like that. So like that's one level of abstraction. Before you used to mix your own paint, then you bought it out of a tube. And now you just pick a color in Photoshop. So it's the same thing with AI. A certain level of magic is lost and a certain level of craftsmanship is lost when you go up these levels of abstraction. But usually efficiency is prioritized when it comes to technology. What's good about this is you're not going to have to focus on the smaller nuances of your craft in the same way. You can just focus on the quality of the idea. But once again, we do lose something in that process. So maybe because of, the fact that you don't need to understand how colors mix together in the same way like you did with paint mixing, people don't have quite the same understanding of color theory. And you lose a bit of humanity that way. But if it makes design more accessible and it makes our jobs easier, it's going to be used just because of the pressure of deadlines and the need to basically move faster constantly. It's like this ruthless machine of blind progress that's basically humanity in a nutshell. But I think if we can sort of preserve the human touch in this, I think it's going to be really important. And I think that I mentioned this in the very beginning. I feel like people are sort of reaching a tipping point where they feel like the technology is controlling them rather than us controlling the technology. So I believe that we'll be able to find that right balance. But yeah, I don't think it's going to take anyone's job necessarily. I guess it could, but we can talk more about that later. But I do think it's definitely going to change the prioritization of what is important as a designer. It's going to rely less and less on technical skill and more on the quality of ideas.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like there's also a fine balance about like, does you control technology or technology control you? Like the example of like social media algorithms, do they push a point of view based on what you engage in? Do they create polarizing views? I have this whole like existential crisis about social media algorithms and politics, but that's another topic. Yeah, and also like what is mentioned in the chat, Clarissa says, I've seen artists use DALL-E as a way to create iterations and finding what elements they like before creating their final piece. So I'd be like, another cool use case for that. And I could imagine this apply to like UX design iterations and many different industrial design, like all design iterations and stuff. So love that. Lots of great conversation in the chat.
Yeah, the chat. Rafiq Anadol is one of my favorites as well. That's mentioned in the chat. Yeah, the human touch matters a lot. I think there's going to be a bias in prompts and processes, and it also could lead to some very not good things around, like if you type in doctor in DALL-E, maybe a lot of the data set is focused on male doctors, for example, and maybe that's not the best thing, but that's going to be a reality that we're going to have to contend with. Like there's inherently a bias in anything that you do. So how do we sort of deal with that? And I think a lot of it's going to come down to sort of curating your own customized data sets. Like, so basically you could download the DALL-E algorithm and populate it with whatever images and data that you're interested in. So that's just a thought. Oh, and somebody asked me what I think about Nothing's new phone design. I don't think much about it. It's a phone. It's pretty good. It's it's a phone. That's it.
Nice. There's a lot of great questions. I'm trying to find a way to get through all of them as well. I know a lot of us buddies in the beginning were interested in AR, VR. So our next question is, we're gonna hop over to our next question. Like a buddy, we all hop together. Do you think augmented reality plays a substantial role in the future of design? If so, how do you imagine the future of AR?
Okay, so this is a tough one. It's hard to predict the future for anything. I have designed a few AR products, both hardware and software. It's hard to say how much of an impact it will make in the immediate future. There are a lot of cultural conventions that people are going to need to get over related to augmented reality. I mean, just look at Google Glass. It didn't go so well, and it has a lot to do with conventions and expectations and just like general manners. So just as an example, I remember in 2007 or 2008 when the iPhone first came out, my cousin actually bought one and we were having a family dinner. And sorry for putting you on blast in front of like 300 people, cousin, but I won't say which one. And he put the iPhone on the table, like face up. And that was absolutely horrifying because it implied that what we were discussing at the table was not interesting enough to him. And he was just waiting for any excuse to play with his little phone or whatever. So it's a little bit more acceptable to do that now. It's still not totally acceptable, but it's the same thing with AR. I mean, it's an even bigger cultural hurdle because you have a thing on your face. It's so invasive. I mean, that's not a trivial thing to get past in terms of just general conventions and culture and just what's expected of you as a person. Even if it just ends up looking like a normal pair of glasses, there's still a lot of cultural norms that we're going to need to be able to get past if we want it to sort of, if we want it to be something that actually goes and kind of is pervasive throughout just general life. I think that AR has very useful applications in more specific use cases like professional contexts and training and things like that. But as just something that you use every day or wear on your face at all times, I don't want to say it's not going to happen, but I think there's a lot that we need to get through. One thing that I can say with relative certainty related to AR or just mixed reality in general, you're going to want to understand physical product design. So industrial design, for example, there are a lot of analogous experiences that happen in physical space that you'll need to understand. So for example, a neural texture on the side, do I have anything here? I don't have, here's something. So like, no, this thing sucks. Okay, look. So if you have a neural texture on the side of a button, here, I'll actually do this. It implies that it's something that you twist. It's a dial. If you have like a little indentation, I just sort of flatten this. I made this out of clay just now. If you have this little flat, like concave indentation right here, it implies that you press it down. So that's an example of a physical, is it a signifier, like an indication of how you're supposed to interact with something. And that's going to be really, really important with AR because you're no longer thinking in 2D. All of this is 3D. And we need to relate it to things that are comfortable for customers in the real world, at least to start with, to sort of get them comfortable with AR. Then you can do all sorts of crazy magical stuff. Like, I don't know, maybe instead of like grabbing something to pick it up right now, maybe you just like snap your fingers or something like that. That actually make it easier. So yeah, short answer is I think it's going to be hard for people to get past the cultural conventions with AR. And if you want to get good at AR, learn about physical product design.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's kind of like the example of the iPhone, how the icons used to look like real world objects, but they've been kind of like the shapes have been simplified. So starting from that, but applying that icon, the Apple style changes to AR as well. And Brandon said in the chat, after COVID, people, I guess, like more normalized having stuff on their faces. And also, thanks so much for making the introduction, Brandon. I see you in the chat as well. Yeah, that leads us to our next question that we will again hop over to. So a lot of us in the chat and also in the audience are like UX and industrial designers, and a lot of design buddies is UX, but we're trying to expand our horizons and learn about all different types of design. What is the next question is, what is the next hip thing after designing for phones and computers? What is the next thing to learn for UX, UI designers or industrial designers besides industrial design and designing for like VR and AR?
It depends on what you're interested in. Kind of going back to, I think it was one of the, if not the first questions you asked is like, what should I do basically? And just do whatever you're interested in is my advice. I don't know that I can confidently say like, oh, this is what's going to happen with AR. Like I said before, learning 3D and physical design and all of the affordances and signifiers and indicators surrounding that world will serve you well. I don't know if I have anything else to add to that question besides that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like also just doing what you're interested in, because I feel like there'll always be a time and place for 2D designs, 3D designs, designing for the metaverse, virtual worlds, game designs. No, I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of things people can do with design, and don't limit yourself to like based on only what's popular. Just do what you're interested in, because by doing that, you'll do a better job and not feel like a chore and stuff.
Agree.
Yeah, a design for car touchscreens. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
car touchscreens. Oh my God. The Tesla one isn't bad, but I'm not going to say some of the other ones that are bad, but man, it's like so obvious that there's a huge gap in just general understanding of UX with some car companies. It's like, oh my God, like this was put together so last second and they didn't even really know how to evaluate it. But I won't get into the negatives. I agree, Brandon, car design, touchscreens is going to be important to fix.
Yeah, I agree as well. Sometimes like on the airplane, you see like the touchscreen stuff, and like I ever since I became a designer, just like critique everything I see. Yeah, so I'm gonna hop over to some questions on Slido and let me know if you want to skip it or want to answer it. And the first uploaded questions by Ashley is, what is the hurdle you see most frequently in bridging the gap between designers and engineers? And how do you address that hurdle?
Okay, so this doesn't just apply to engineers. This applies to everyone. If you want somebody to hear what you're saying, you got to listen to them first. So anytime I'm dealing with a tough engineer, I'll just listen to their perspective and not just like, sort of casually listen. I will actively listen to what their concerns are on the project. Because if you're not really making any effort to understand where they're coming from, why should they try to understand where you are coming from? And then when I do speak with them, and once I understand what their priorities and motivations are, I can basically say, okay, they care about optimizing for manufacturing constraints, for example. Every single thing that I talk about is going to be through that lens. So I'm not going to talk to them about design stuff. I'm not going to talk to them about usability as much. I'm going to frame every single solution that I make through what is important to them. That I think is probably the most important thing. And over time, once you build trust with them, you can gradually sort of share little bits of information about design once you've sort of built that trust. But, designers complaining about engineers not listening to them, I think the best thing is to just do what you would like them to do for you. That would be my main piece of advice. And the last thing I want to mention about this is that, there's some people that you're just not going to get through to. And I don't have really any advice for that other than to just be patient and just understand that that's a reality of some professional contexts. Some people you're just not going to reach, and you try your best, but it's not always going to work. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, blah, blah, blah. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, definitely agree. I feel like these also translate very well to UX design when, in my experience working with engineers, understanding the technical constraints, the timelines, how things work as well early on. Get their vibe check. I say vibe check a lot, just like get their align. It's my way of saying like let's align, but I call it a vibe check at work, and I've seen people like use the same. Just get their vibe check. Early and involving them early on in the process as well, just to make sure everything is all good and stuff based on technical limitations. Cool. Lots of great questions. I'm trying to find a way to like try to loop in as many as I can, but I know a lot of questions submitted in the chat are regarding like entering design. So let's hop over to some of that. So let's hop over to breaking in the field. What was your design journey like? Do you have any advice for a beginner designer or a designer who wants to collaborate with others but don't know where to start?
What was my design journey like? It was chaotic and it was really hard and horrible. Do you want me to go through my journey very quickly?
Yeah. I want to try to get through as many of our buddies' questions as we can.
All right, I'm going to skip it then. Okay. My advice to a beginner designer is to just start anywhere. Like I said before, curiosity is like the cornerstone of creativity. If you don't have any inspiration, it's going to be hard for you to start. So the more inspiration and information you take in, the easier it will be for you to start. And really, that's the key thing. You just got to go. You just got to start doing it. Another thing that you can do is look at the masters that you really, really look up to and just emulate them. So if you really are not sure where to start, it's okay to copy, at least when you're just beginning. Okay. Try to copy what they made. And through that, you'll understand why they made certain decisions. So don't just mindlessly copy, actually study like, oh, why might they have made this design decision? Why is this button placed in this way? Like, what is the deal with this curve here? Like, how is it chosen? Eventually you're going to have to create your own work, right? And you should never present someone else's work as your own. I'm not suggesting that. But I mean, think of it this way. When you learn a musical instrument, you don't start by creating your own compositions. You learn other people's songs. So it's the same thing with design. If you're not sure where to start by learning other people's songs or designs.
Yeah,
I think that's basically it. I think that's basically it. Yeah.
yeah. I personally started by like recreating screens on my favorite apps in Figma to learn how to use Figma and like why they make certain buttons the way they are. And yeah, we would love to learn about your journey as well, your design journey in the chat. I'm also really curious in why it was chaotic. Maybe some buddies can also relate and find some inspiration from that.
I'll do it quickly. The short of it is that I don't fit in. So it's very difficult for, I don't fit into the typical design mold. And it was quite difficult for me because no matter how much I try to hide it in interviews or whatever else, like job interviews, they know I don't fit in, and that's just how it is. So I pretty much had to carve my own path. And anytime you do that, it's very, very difficult. Now, the good news is that I don't really have to relate to designers at all in my everyday job, because my clients are not other designers. They're business owners or, marketing people or founders or whoever else. So that is sort of the benefit of sort of starting your own company, starting your own business, or starting a YouTube channel. But it was very difficult for me. And even in like my freshman year of starting school, I had one professor tell me that basically I was wasting his time. I was wasting the university's time even being there. So that's very hard to hear when you're a 19-year-old kid. Like, if somebody said that to me now, even if I didn't have the experience that I do, I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever, man. Like, shut the hell up. But at the time when you're 19 years old, you're very impressionable. So yeah, it was really, really tough. So my advice would be to say, like, my advice is basically like, if you don't fit in a certain context, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a failure. It just means that you don't fit in within that context, and that's okay.
I love that. I also had a very similar experience at around 19. The professor was like, yo, Grace, what do you want to do after college? Or I was like probably like 20. He was like, oh, I was like, I want to do design. He was like, what are you doing with your life? You have a bioengineering degree. Like, you belong engineering. Like, what the hell are you doing as well? And I feel like, especially like us in college, we're like so young and impressionable, and just take everything with a grain of salt. It's your life to live. You don't live life to please someone else. You live life to please yourself and have fun and make an impact along the way. At least that's what I think. So don't let professors get you down. There's a lot of nice professors though, but
well, wait. You should listen to professors and their feedback. That was not the takeaway. The takeaway is that a professor should never, ever make an assumption about your future prospects in the industry. That is not their right. They can evaluate the work where it is currently, but they have no way of predicting where you're going to end up. That's the important thing.
Yeah,
that would be my advice.
Yeah, listen to like what they have to teach, but if they give you feedback on like you shouldn't be doing this for your career, then question that. You just like ask like, oh, why do you think so? Like, yeah.
Yeah, Brandon.
No. Both my parents are professors too. So I grew up like not that way, but like when giving like career advice, it's good to like learn from many different perspectives, because when I had a lot of professors telling me that I shouldn't do design, I took that personally and I shouldn't have, but I'm glad I went through that process. It helped me recognize and identify that. Yeah, there's all nice professors though. Like most, I would say like 99% of the professors I had were really great. And they were really supportive.
Yeah, they're generally pretty good. It's not that all professors are bad. I do have a problem when they like kind of have this ego trip thing. I find it very, very alarming, because you're supposed to be inspiring these kids, not putting them down. And you can tell somebody that their work isn't up to par without completely destroying them. There's a method of doing that, but I won't get into that. Somebody asked, anytime you're about to design, do you source inspirations, or do you just, I source inspiration, but if I'm designing, like, let's say, I don't know, a pair of sunglasses, I do not look at other sunglasses. I'll look at pretty much anything but that. I don't want to look at what is already existing in that space. And then how did I overcome it? I don't know. I just kind of, I don't know. I was like, well, what else am I going to do? Yeah. So that's pretty much, I just want to answer some of the questions.
Yeah, lots of great questions. And Ash also said some professors aren't to teach, some professors aren't to comb their ego. They're
Yeah.
usually obvious about their intentions. Yeah, that sums it up my college experience as well. Most professors, in my experience, are wanting to teach. So, yeah, um, cool. Lots of great questions. Trying to find a way to organically ask more questions. So the next question is kind of on the topic of professors is how can educators prepare students who are interested in going into the design field?
So, okay. A lot of professors or just senior people in general, they have a process that they know works. And I think that's good. That's important to have like a repeatable process in your design education. But it's important not to get too stuck in your ways. I think that's the most important thing. So I would say be open to new tools and processes. And as weird as this sounds, listen to what your students are interested in and try to foster them and foster those interests and hobbies. That would be my advice, because you can learn a lot from students. I mean, they probably don't know nearly as much as you do about a given subject, but they probably know at least a couple things. And if you have 10 or 15 students, that's, let's say 2 or 3 things from each student. That's like, what is that? I don't feel like doing quick maths right now, but it's a lot of things. So the point is, you can learn a lot from your students if you actually listen. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone's like so different and stuff, and not everyone wants to fit in this specific mold. Yeah, there's a really great question Tanya asked in the chat and Slido as well is who do you think is better, a specialist or a generalist for design? Because I know you talked about learning lots of skills, but do you think we ever have to like specialize in one point?
That goes back to context, I think. So for example, it is, I mean, there are some guys and girls who are just so incredibly talented in one thing. Like there's this guy, Tim Zarki, and he does these crazy algorithmic renders, and he's clearly a specialist. And, I dabble in Houdini and visual effects software a little bit, but he's clearly on another level. And then there are other people who are on like another level above like Zarki, even because Zarki is more focused on product design as it relates and like product renderings. And then there are other people who are just focused purely on visual effects. I don't know that one is better than the other. I think it really just depends on your interests and what you want to do. If you want to work at a larger company, generally speaking, they're going to want specialists. If you're going to work at a startup or do your own venture or anything like that, they're going to want generalists. But it's like impossible to say which one is better. It really just depends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends. Like a lot of our questions, like everything. Cool. Lots of great questions. All right. Next question is kind of on the topic of like learning design, entering the field is how do I become more aware and find information of those of like basically future trends in design of those trends? Like how do you keep up with to date without reading every single article?
I just read every single article.
Yeah, same.
I don't know. I actually don't spend as much time in design related discussion. I think there's a lot to be gained from looking at things outside of design, looking at other disciplines. So that's typically what I do. I also like to look at just general macro trends happening. So one macro trend right now is this sort of retro revival that you see in a lot of automotive design, as well as a lot of other aspects of culture right now. Like think about how many superhero reboot movies there are. It's like nauseating. So people feel, or companies are starting to feel a little bit squeezed. They don't want to take a risk. So they just rehash an old concept basically to make it palatable to an audience. And they sort of pander to the lowest common denominator right now. That is a big trend that I'm seeing. I don't know what to make of it, but just knowing that it exists, I think is important. And then I can sort of figure out like, okay, how am I going to deal with this or integrate it into my process and or combat it or whatever else that I want to do. Like, why is this happening? Ultimately, it just boils down to not willing to take risks, or it's, it's maybe going to kill the company if they take risks. But I don't know if that really answers the question. Just sort of like be aware and be curious. I think curiosity is probably the most important thing, the most important trait of any designer, because, how are you supposed to create if you don't have any, source material? You can't create in a vacuum. So that would be my advice. Just sort of focus on things that you're interested in.
Yeah, I agree. And look beyond design and future trends, inspiration outside of design. That's what I do as well. Just look at tech in general, or like society in general, or cultural norms. Lots of
Yeah, for
great.
sure.
Yeah. A question that we also see a lot in design buddies is, what is your advice on how to handle fear for it not being good enough to be a designer, or self-doubt, or how do you deal with like imposter syndrome?
Okay, so don't worry about not being good enough, because you certainly aren't good enough, at least in some kind of context. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk more about what I mean by that. Um, I've I haven't done this recently, but I've applied for jobs at companies that I admire many, many, many times and never even gotten an interview. And I've even gotten referrals and I still didn't get an interview. So in that context, I am a complete and utter failure. But my YouTube channel is one of the biggest design channels right now in the world. I run my own successful design consultancy and I'm a professor. So sure, I didn't get that job and I am totally a failure in that regard, but who really cares? I've recontextualized that failure and built it into something completely different. Another thing is that you might not be successful in the way that you hoped for your job, but you're probably successful in a lot of other ways. So, maybe you're in a romantic relationship and you really care about that person, or you have friends that you really care about. Or maybe you're getting really depressed because you have none of those things and you don't have a job and you have nothing else. But, you probably at least have your health. Or one thing I can say with certainty is that at least you have an internet connection. So, count your blessings. Even just doing the dishes or something like that is a trivial task, but it does sort of point to some kind of success and initiative on your part. One thing that I think is hard to ignore regarding success is recognition. So I don't know if I'd still be making YouTube videos with the same, at least not with the same level of intensity, if nobody ever watched them, right? Like, I'd still make them because I learn a lot from them, but maybe I wouldn't make them as often, for example. We all need some kind of positive feedback in order to keep going. But at the same time, I think it's important to frame your creative pursuits around what you learn about yourself, what you learn about the world around you, and what you learn about others. Okay. It's hard to frame it that way. And I understand that there are constraints. It's like, well, okay, I learned something, but what am I going to do now that I don't have any money? Like, I got to pay rent here, John. I get it, but you can't control those variables. So you just have to kind of get over that and say, okay, all that I can take away from this is what I've learned from these experiences. You can't worry about failure because I have failed more times than you have tried. I can guarantee you that, probably 10 times more than you have tried, just based like the person asking this question. Maybe I shouldn't make that assumption, but if you're afraid of failure, I mean, we all are. I want to be successful just as much as anybody else, but after a certain point, you just have to go for it. And you can go for it in a small capacity. Maybe it's not like posting a YouTube video on the internet for everybody to criticize. Maybe it's as simple as just sort of, reading a couple articles about a subject that you're interested in, and then gradually sort of laddering up from there. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's just kind of just thinking of like focusing on what you can control instead of what you can't control, and just try to go about that. And everyone starts different journey. And I feel like life is just an experiment. You're always going to be a beginner at something, but it's always an opportunity to learn, grow, and level up as a human. Cool. Next question is about kind of jumping back into UX for physical and hybrid experiences. It's by Anonymous on Slido. Is any thoughts on introducing on a larger scale UX for physical and hybrid experiences instead of making just about digital ones?
Yeah, I kind of answered this one before. Basically, spend time learning about the physical objects around you and how people interact with them. Remember, I was talking about, the button with the indentation on it. Like this indentation implies that you push it down. If this had knurling on the side, it would imply that you twist it. That's just one example of like an interaction that you might have with the objects around you. That would be my advice. Really familiarize yourself with that because that's how it's going to start. That's how digital UX, as it becomes more and more 3D and more mixed in with reality, that's how you're basically going to set yourself apart because making 2D screens in that particular context isn't going to cut it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Next question by Caleb, which a lot of upvotes in a very short time, is how would you pivot back into industrial design or any design field midway through your career from something very different when you haven't done since university?
Um, hmm. I would frame that time away as an advantage. And like obviously I would upskill as best I could. I would get as good as I could at my job, my industrial design job. Um, but one thing that you have that most other entry level industrial designers don't is just experience. When I say experience, I mean life experience. There is no substitute for just knowing how to deal with a wide range of people that a 22-year-old just is not going to have. So let's just say, I don't know how old you are. Let's just say this person is like 30 years old. You have 8 years of extra life experience that you have to draw from, both in the way that you create work and also the way that you relate to people. So that would be my advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. You can always pull from your past experiences and have that help you stand out. Next question is, we'll hop to our next question again, is how about an unconnected future? What are the new horizons of design work outside of social media and the first world problems about the stimulated experiences?
What do they mean by an unconnected future?
Yeah, maybe you can specify. I'm just reading through whatever is most uploaded on Slido. I'm assuming like what opportunities are outside of social media or like outside of designing for physical experiences.
Oh, let me read this question. What are the new?
I guess.
Okay, so I think I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but I think it's basically like, can we escape these screens? The short answer
Mhm,
is
yes.
yes. Um, I think I'm actually working on a project right now that focuses on a totally new way to approach technology, but I can't say anything about it. But stay tuned. There's also another company. You should look into humane tech in general. Look up humane tech. And there's a company called Humane as well that you can also check out. But that would be my general advice. Check out humane tech and look into that. That's going to be really important for you. I don't know if I have much to say beyond that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's interesting. Let's escape these screens. Definitely.
Yeah.
Important. Yeah. James asked a really interesting question on Zoom. Lots of designers today are being asked to show business results. What are the kind of metrics slash KPIs do you think designers or creators should be paying attention to as these XR experiences proliferate?
Oh, that's an easy one. Does it make the company money?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
save them money? Um, no, seriously though. I mean, there are a lot of other ways to quantify that. Maybe it relates to engagement or time spent on the app or all those sorts of things. Um, that's sort of the paradigm that we're in now, for better or for worse. So that's what I would focus on.
Yep. Yeah, whether it's making money or saving money, but acquiring users, saving time, all about the theme of making money or saving money. Cool. Wow, there's a lot of questions. I am really trying to pick from what answers the most. And we'll have a group photo at 58. So we like to spice things up and do a little wave. So feel free to like grab an object with you for our little design buddies tradition. And we see a few questions about freelancing. So about freelancing, how do you engage your clients to try new design trends? For example, brand identity.
So one thing you have to remember about clients is that their primary motive in, at least this is like, yeah, their primary motive in pretty much all cases is to make sure that your design will either make them money or save them money. So if you're going to explore an unproven trend or something, you have to explain, you have to be able to convince them, convince isn't the right word, demonstrate to them how it's going to actually help their business. That's really the most important thing in the current system that we're in now. Like, how is this going to help the company, basically? Just because it's cool, like that's how designers think. They're like, well, it's new and it's cool. Like, why wouldn't we try it? But you have to understand what your client's motives are and look at it through that lens. I mentioned this with the engineering interaction as well. It's the exact same thing. It's like an engineer doesn't care about the user experience. They should. They probably do to a degree, but their primary motivation is getting this thing to work. So you have to frame all of your design decisions through that lens. And in terms of the client, you have to figure out what they care about and frame all of your design decisions through that lens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Just understanding their, kind of like with engineers, understanding what their goals, their problems, the pain points, trying to solve that as well. Lots of great questions. I don't know if, like, let me know if you've heard, I haven't heard of B-centered design, but the next upvoted question is, I came across this article about human-centered design is broken, and which speaks about a new concept about B-centered design. What is your take on it?
I'd love to see the article.
Yeah, same.
I have no opinion on it because I have no idea what it's about.
Okay, cool. I just see it like uploaded
Sorry.
a lot, so I just wasn't sure. Yeah, no worries at all. We're all like vibing here.
Yeah,
I say vibe a lot. I don't know why.
it's okay. Yeah, I'd
Just
love if somebody can knows the article and can link it in the chat. I'm not going to be able to answer it. I'm not going to read the question on live, read the article on live stream or anything like that. But I'll read it later and maybe I'll find an answer some
yeah,
other time.
I'm also very interested as well.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah. Another question is, will you ever open your own studio?
Well, I have my own studio. Do they mean like hire a bunch of employees?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I do hire a lot of contractors now. It's just that they're not full time. It's kind of a big step. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, no worries. Um, Next question. Well, we're gonna take a, I guess, kind of with our time coming close to an end, is there anything else about the future of design that you want to chat about for our buddies here that I didn't get a chance to talk about today? Or what advice would you give your younger designer self?
I would say it's important to remember that you're not entitled to the results of your creativity. All you're entitled to is just the process itself. So you have to understand that design and creative fields are notoriously difficult to break into. And you have to be okay with, the possibility that it's not always going to work out exactly as you thought it would. I had a very, very different idea of what my professional life would be like before I really got into the field. I did not think I would be starting a YouTube channel about design. I didn't think I'd have my own consultancy. I don't know. I just thought I would get like some job and I'd be a creative director now at some big company. And it didn't happen that way. But honestly, the way that it did happen really exceeded my expectations. So I would say just be open to new experiences. If there's a potential opportunity that's maybe not exactly in line with what you were expecting, if it's interesting to you, as long as it's interesting to you, I would say just go for it. And that would be my advice.
Yeah, I agree. You don't have to always do what like society tells you to do. Like, especially for me, like growing up in a Bay Area, I was always like told by the authority figures in my life, like you gotta be a doctor, engineer, lawyer, but just explore. I feel like I have more fun and enjoy life more doing it. And with that, we're gonna do a group photo. And so y'all are gonna turn the camera. Sometimes we like to grab objects, like I have like a little Kuma here. Um, Before we do a group photo, we're gonna do a wave. It's like kind of like what we do at Design Buddies to spice things up because we don't like to be mainstream. So we do a little wave for our Instagram story, which I'll tag you, and then do a photo. So I'm gonna remove our pins and then kind of show everyone in gallery view. So I'll give everyone a few moments to turn on their camera, can fix your hair, whatever y'all want. But we're just all family friendly of bunnies here in this rabbit hole together, hopping each other. All these bunny puns. I clearly had a lot of coffee this morning. Yeah.
Big
So
shout out to Vina with the mask. It's super awesome.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep
Oh
going.
no, you're good. I'm just pulling up the screens so I can expanding my view so I can take the Instagram story. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh, we have to do a few screens. I'm trying to get all the buddies here in our store. So we'll do a static one first and then a wave. So feel free to like grab whatever object you want. I'll have Pusheen with me this time.
Brandon just grabbed a sword.
Yeah, you can bring anything you want. Be yourself. So we don't want you to feel like you have to change yourself to fit in. We're just all buddies here, proudly being ourselves. Yeah, so I'll count down 5 seconds and we'll have group selfie and just keep holding because you have multiple pages. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Say full. Get all the pages. Cool. And then we're gonna do a wave for Instagram story. So feel free to like dab, dance, wave, do whatever y'all are vibing with. Oh, every design buddy zone, I associate Grace with more bunnies. I love that. I guess TLD, I was like big reason why I made design buddies is I felt like other design communities I was in at that time were a little bit intimidating. And I like bunnies, so that is why they have bunnies. All right.
I specifically asked Grace to put more bunnies on the poster.
Yeah, so we have like a cool bunny and a celebrating bunny as well.
Yeah.
So we're all real bunny buddies here. All right, ready, set, wave. Yo, what is up, buddies? We just finished a lit chat about the future of design with Design Theory. Thank you, buddies, for coming today. Make sure to check out the recording on our YouTube channel. Cool. That is going to go on our Instagram stories. You'll see yourself on TV. And with that concludes our wonderful event. We'll have another event on Wednesday about how to level up your portfolio presentation on design interviews. So you're welcome to hop into our Discord community and join us there as well. Yeah, so that concludes our event. Have a very nice Monday or Tuesday morning, depending where y'all are coming from. And I'm going to say bye to our YouTube buddies as I stop the recording. So bye, YouTube.